Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is A.B. Sam Thomas, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Middle East. First of all, welcome to this particular webinar that we are staging on behalf of the Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy as part of the App Olympics competition. So I'm just waiting for a few more users to join, and then we'll get started with today's webinar, which is going to be a very interesting fireside chat with the CEO of one of the most popular apps out there. But just to kind of set the stage and give you a little bit of an introduction about what we're doing here and why we are here. And I think that needs to start with an introduction to the App Olympics. So for those of you who are not familiar, the App Olympics is a competition that was launched this year as part of the Create Apps in Dubai initiative, which in turn was announced by His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Crown Prince of Dubai and Chairman of the Executive Council of Dubai. So this particular contest is open to UAE nationals and residents of all ages from any emirate, as well as global tech startup interested in establishing a presence in Dubai. As such, this contest aims to enable participants to learn about app development, build mobile apps of their own, and perhaps most importantly, compete for major prizes and awards that will accelerate the growth of their respective businesses. Now, as most of you know, applications have been open for the App Olympics for quite a while. But for those of you who have not applied yet, please remember that you have only until the 20th of December, that is literally next week, to submit your application on createapps.ae. So for those of you who haven't applied yet, please let me urge you to don't miss out on this opportunity and go to createapps.ae to submit your application. Now, going to the main business of today, as I mentioned, the App Olympics is an initiative that aims to give participants a structured learning journey in the world of app development. And today we are going to be hearing from someone who has quite a lot of experience in building what is essentially, like I said, one of the most popular apps in the UAE and indeed the wider MENA region. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Talabat, which as far as I know, delivers hundreds of millions of food orders, grocery items, and other products per year to its customers in 9 countries across the region. And we are very proud to have with us Tomaso Rodriguez, CEO of Talabat, for this particular webinar. Tomaso, first of all, welcome.
Hi, Hebe. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have joined us, Tomaso and I are going to have a conversation about how he and his team have made use of a very human-centric, user-centric approach to build up this remarkable app and business that most of us use almost on a daily basis. So, Tomaso, maybe just to start things off, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and how you came to be leading Talabat? Just a little kind of abridged version about yourself.
Of course. Very quickly, I'm Italian. I am an engineer as a background, management engineer. I've been working in this industry for the last 11 years. I actually started as an entrepreneur myself at a company, then I sold the company, then I worked in venture capital for a bit, and then I started working with Uber in 2012. In the ride-sharing business, back when it was a super small company. We were around 100 people globally back then. And then worked in ride-sharing for a while, being responsible for Italy and Greece. And then I moved to Singapore to launch Uber Eats, which was the new thing coming up in 2015 across Asia. And then again, I moved from Uber to another company called Grab, which is kind of the super app of Southeast Asia. They do food delivery, they do ride sharing, financial services. And I was the CEO of food delivery. And 4 years and a half ago, I moved to Dubai to become the CEO of Talabat. So I'm not the founder of Talabat. Talabat's been around for a long time. Talabat was founded in 2004. It's one actually of the eldest food delivery companies in the world, but I joined them 4 years and a half ago to continue the successful journey of the company.
Tomaso, just again, like you mentioned, Talabat is an app that has been there for a while, and I believe you started out in 2019. Can you just give us a little, again, just to kind of set the stage? what's the state of play for the business today? Can you give us any numbers? How would you describe the business? I'm going to ask you to do an elevator pitch of the app so that it's no longer an entrepreneurial endeavor, I would say.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So Talabat was born in 2004 and was born in Kuwait. So it was born in GCC, and has been growing ever since. It took and then started expanding from Kuwait to other countries. In 2015, it reached 100 million orders, all combined, all together in the previous 11 years, and has been growing exponentially because today we do around 1 million orders a day. So that's
Wow.
that's 400 million orders a year, right? We do now in 3 months what it took us 11 years at the beginning to do, right? So that's where the business is at today. We are in 8 countries across the region, mostly in GCC, plus Egypt, Jordan, and Iraq. And we operate mainly a few lines of business. The first one is food delivery. The second one is groceries and what we call quick commerce. And then I would say fintech as a third leg.
Let's kind of like break this down, and I do want to mention the 1 million orders per day. I mean, for us who use the app on a daily basis, we don't see that, right? We are just like, okay, 20 minutes delivery, the thing is here and we are happy. But take us through the back end of things, like how easy, difficult it is to run a business like that, which has, like you rightly mentioned, 1 million orders per day. Like what goes behind the scenes?
It's extremely complex, actually, and it's a very ungrateful business because I feel that people remember a lot of times if an order went bad, and very lesser if like they remember the one that went bad and not the 99.
Mm-hmm.
They were super good. So that's why our targets, what we have when we look at delivery times, at delays and operations and quality of delivery. I mean, we never look at the average values, right? Mm-hmm. We always look at the 99th percentile. Right. So we need to make sure that the 99% of the orders are perfect, right? Not that on average we deliver on time, that on average, operations are good. The 99th percentile has to be perfect, right? And I think it's an industry because it's a business that runs real time, any time of the day, any minute. There's food being delivered, groceries being delivered. You need to make sure that you have very, very good experiences, right? So there's a big obsession into the 99th percentile, the way we look at it, and yeah, of course, this translates in operations, like in logistics on the ground, customer support, vendor operations, so the restaurant preparation times, and all these kind of things, and a lot of product also, kind of all the things we can do through product, machine learning, to make algorithms better and better every single day.
From your perspective, Tomaso, and because we're talking about app development, looking at here human-centric design kind of point of view, like even now when we're talking about the App Olympics, we are encouraging our participants to keep the user first, keep focused on a very user-focused design, user-focused experience, so to speak. From your perspective, like what are some of the critical milestones that you would say that have helped Talabat's growth and its popularity within the market today?
Yeah, look, that's a very, very good question, and also a very hard one to answer. But I think the way I look at businesses in general, and Talabat and food delivery is not different than any other business, is to succeed, you really need 3 things, right? The first one is product, the second one is operations, and the third one is marketing. And these 3 things have to be in this exact order, right? If you don't have a good product, if you don't have good operations, no matter how much marketing you do, you're not going to succeed, right? And vice versa, right? And when it comes to food delivery or any marketplace business, so any business where you have vendors on one side and customers on the other side. The big differentiation in product is your assortment. So your which vendors do you have on the platform, right? So we are a food delivery business, but we don't do food ourselves, right? We depend on amazing restaurants out there to create amazing food, right? If we don't have the absolute best food, the best restaurants, no one will come to our platform. And we don't think as our business very dissimilar to, for example, Netflix or video streaming, OSN, etc. Why does a customer choose one platform versus another? Because there's the last season of Game of Thrones or Squid Game or whatever. Right? So that's number one, the product, right? Number two is operations. So how good do you deliver that product? How good is your logistics? How good is your customer service? So the moment I press the button, how likely am I going to get the food that I want in the time that I want without any hiccups, right? And I think operations is a very, very big game changer in this industry. And lastly, of course, you need to acquire customers through marketing, through good promotions, through good advertising. But the efficiency of the money that you spend on marketing is going to be 100% correlated to the previous 2 points, product and operations. Right? So that's kind of a little framework that I like to think about when I think about business, and Talabat is not different than any other business.
Tomaso, can we, I mean, this is great what you're telling me, and this is like a great way to look at, how one should build their businesses of any kind, not just apps per se. Yeah. But maybe we can distill this into like each of these 3 points, and starting with, like you said, the product. Again, are there any, again, just based, not just purely from Talabat's point of view, but in your experience as a user, as an entrepreneur, as even in venture capital, I think you have worked for a while. Like, what are kind of like the essential attributes that make for a successful product? Like, what are the kind of things that entrepreneurs or app developers should be looking at when building a product?
Yeah. So I think you have to this is a question that I think is very specific to the industry you operate in, right? And I think depending on the industry you operate in, you should understand what are the success factors of your business. What do customers look for when they have to interact with your business, right? And for food delivery, I think the most important factor is selection, right? And which restaurants do you have on the platform?
Yeah.
Now, having those restaurants on the platform is not enough, right? But if you know that, because customers may not find them, right? May not know that they are on the platform, right? But knowing that that's your key success factor, then you can build a lot of product features to make sure that you make the discoverability of these restaurants easy for the customers, right? Example, a vendor list that is not kind of standard for everyone, but is personalized to your previous orders or your habits, or what do we understand about you, right? Or help restaurants that just joined the platform and maybe they don't have enough ratings and they don't have a relevance in the algorithm yet to kind of be bumped up a bit, or create a sort of visibility products for vendors that want to invest and be more visible in the app, right? So I think if that's your one success metric, the most important metric that you have to succeed in your business, then all your product efforts should be put to create as many features as you can to succeed in that metric, right? So it's not a matter of like what are the best product practices. I think is what are the business metrics that are relevant to you, and how do you influence those through product?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I also want to mention one more thing before moving to the next two factors, and this is like you rightly mentioned. Making those personalized choices. Again, I'm very much a power Talabat user, so again, I really appreciate the fact that they remember my previous orders, and some might say there is they know too much, but from a user point of view, I'm very happy when I'm given suggestions that make sense for me. And I'm mentioning this particular factor because I kind of want to understand from you, again, purely in your role as CEO, like how important is this, continuous focus on innovation at Talabat? Because, the Talabat we had in 2004 is not what we have now, and it continues to change. Like every now and then, I'm surprised by something that I figure out. The 20-minute delivery is something that I still am quite honestly shocked by. I don't know how it works, but I love it. So things like that. So I'm curious to know that, that this focus on innovation, how important it is, and how much of it, how do you make a balance between, keeping the business running as it should, but at the same time innovating, trying new things, experimenting?
Yeah, no, that's the, I think, the core of our business and the bread and butter. And I mean, we're in an industry, or today we are in a world, not an industry, whether either you disrupt or you're being disrupted, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to never settle and never be satisfied with what you build, because your customers will not be satisfied. You will never create a product that for the next 10 years your customers will be satisfied with, right? So I think, as you said, in 2004, when people will push a button and get their food delivered at their doorstep, probably back then it looked like magic. It looked like insane. And even if the food were to arrive 2 or 3 hours later, it will still have that magic effect.
Yeah.
Today, if it's not delivered in 20 minutes, I mean, you get very upset. You get very the expectation of the average customer is much, much higher, right?
Yeah.
And we started experimenting in 2019 with the quick commerce, the groceries delivery, and Talabat Mart, which is our own grocery delivered 24/7 in 20 minutes. And that has been fantastic. And customers at the beginning were like, "What? This is insane! Like, you can get your groceries now delivered in 20 minutes, right?" Yeah. And today it's more about also, what prices do we have, what your assortment do you have, do you have the right promotion, the right? So I think customers become more and more, they have higher expectations, right? Which is good. Internally, we have a lot of innovation ongoing. We have things that are more top down and things that are more bottoms up. We have a program that is called T-Lab, which is because at some point we were doing so many things, and we figured out that we had 10 startups running inside the Talabat. And so we said, okay, let's kind of formalize a bit this, because like these startups don't get much attention inside the company because they don't contribute much to the overall business, but they have a big potential, right? So we created this thing called T-Labs, Talabat Labs, where we have all sorts of ideas coming either from employees or from management, and we incubate these startups inside. And over the years, they either succeed or they fail, and we replace with others. But it's kind of an innovation lab. And some things like a Talabat Rewards, our reward system, Talabat Pro, our subscription, our coffee brand, Everyday Roastery, all these things are into Talabat Labs, and we have this DNA of innovation that is always going to be there.
I love hearing this. And like you mentioned, I'm so glad you mentioned T-Labs, because I was going to bring it up, but I'm glad you mentioned it before me. And I hope, again, for the people who are watching this, and again, who are thinking about building their own app-based businesses, that they take note of this culture of innovation, because you can't be satisfied with the product that you showcase on day one. It has to continuously develop and progress for it to be a long-term success. Tomaso, I'm going to move on to our second point that you mentioned, operations. And I do want to highlight that particular thing that you mentioned about, we want the users, at least as users, we'll remember the one bad experience we had and not the 100 great experiences we had. Now, again, from people who are just building up apps and just launching into the market, this is something that is scary, right? And at the same time, I would like to ask you to put on your entrepreneurial hat on for this particular moment and talk about, how good is, enough for an app to be launched? How do we manage that expectation of it has to be perfect versus let's test, let's keep our users happy, even if they have complaints, keep going back and forth?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And this is a debate that I constantly have with my product team. And we had a product summit last quarter, a few months ago, And one of the things they asked me, okay, what can we do differently? And my response was, I think we should test less, because if I think about last year, I cannot remember any big fail that we had in product, right? And that's because we didn't have any failures, because maybe we tested too much before launching things, and then the response was always good, right? But if you don't fail, it means you're not taking enough risk somehow, right? And maybe you don't shoot for the stars, you shoot for a kind of a steady progression, but maybe sometimes you have to take a bit of those risks. How much is the right amount of testing? I think it depends on the situation, right? If you are launching a product that is absolutely disruptive, kind of you creating a new market, a new product, a new industry, I think no matter how bad your app is, but if you're solving a problem that no one else solves, you're always going to have people that use your product, right? But if you're entering in a super competitive space where there are very sophisticated players that do something very similar to what you're doing, I think you better have a very, very good product and a clear differentiation strategy to start with, right? So I think it really depends on the situation. But going back to the customer, I think you really need to understand what is the problem you're solving for the customers, and how big is that problem. The biggest the problem, the more the lengths the customer will be willing to go and forgive you for a subpar product.
Yeah, again, great answer, honestly. And this is something we at Entrepreneur hear from a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is a question that comes up. And like you said, it's not like a one-size-fits-all answer. It has to be dependent on you. And especially when you are in a competitive landscape, I think the amount of what should I say, criticism you can get is perhaps more, as opposed to something that nobody has actually solved. So I do understand that aspect. Tomaso, in that case also, I kind of want to ask about,
I can give you an example. For example,
yes,
on food, whatever we do on food has to be tested, triple tested, because it's our core flow, our core business, highly competitive environment, etc. When we launched groceries in 2019, I think we had pretty embarrassing flows and features when we launched it, right? And I think the load time of the pages was super long, a lot of items without pictures. There were some, when you would search for something, you would return something completely wrong. So there were a lot of bad pieces of experience, but still no one was doing that. It was a very innovative product, right? So customers were willing to cope with that, right? Of course, you need to improve over time, but it was good enough to launch back then.
Yeah. And this brings me to, I want to say, the third aspect that you mentioned, marketing. And again, the marketing that you do now is obviously different from the marketing that you did when you launched. But maybe can you talk about how important is marketing right now for you as a business, and how much that has changed, and maybe different tactics, different endeavors that you're using to make use of this marketing aspect for the business?
Yeah. So marketing, it's a very important lever for any app and any e-commerce game, and I'm pretty sure that everyone on this webinar is familiar. But it boils down really to two things. One is how much does it cost you to acquire the customers. The second one is how much is the value you get from the customers over their period. And depending on whether you get that value immediately, or you get it in 1 year, or in 2 years, or in 3 years, what is your break-even points, right? So for an industry like ours, I mean, we usually spend money to acquire a customer, and then a customer start placing orders and increase their frequency over time. And maybe after 1 year that we acquired them, we make back the money we spent. But then from year 2 onwards, that is pure profit, right? That we make, right? But there are businesses where your acquisition costs are higher than the value you get from the customers. And going back to the framework, I think it's either means that you're not doing good marketing, you're using the wrong channels, the wrong segmentations, the wrong audiences and whatever, or your point 1 and 2, product and operations, are not good enough, so your customers are not sticking around, they're churning, right? And I think this is on a very tactical standpoint. But the other thing that I think is very relevant in our business, and maybe a bit less in other businesses, is that, you know, people don't order food every day, although I would love them to order food every day, but
Hello.
you know, exactly. But you know, the average customer orders like 9 or 10 times a month, right? So it opens you up maybe one every 3 days. So it's not constantly top of mind. So you have to create that top of mind awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the branding investments come up. Like when we, you know, do billboards on the road or on your YouTube, when you're watching, when you get an amazing unskippable ad of Talabat on, on YouTube, right? Which I also complain about with my team.
But it does the job. It gets you in the head. So yeah, it's there. You have to admit it. Yeah.
Being constantly top of mind and reminding people, hey, look, maybe you want to order food now. And depending on your industry, the one you operate in, you also may want to remind your customers. So there's also a top of mind piece to marketing to consider.
Tomaso, if there is something that you mentioned here that I think you mentioned it, like the stickiness factor of the app, you know, to get people to come back. And I want to, again, just because Talabat is like a larger enterprise than most of the attendees here who might be just starting out on their apps. I think there is that, like you said, it's a constant conversation. It's a constant challenge to understand whether, you know, there is that initial, usually you see in apps when they're just about to launch, there are a lot of offers, there are a lot of things that are being done to attract users. But then does it pan out in the long run? You know, will they come and become, like you said, you know, paying customers that deliver you a profit? Is there any particular advice you would give for people who are just starting out on this? Like for people who are just starting out app-based businesses, is there any, I don't know, any tips and tricks that you would offer them?
That's a very, very fantastic question. And it reminds me of like 2018, 2019, or 2020 maybe, when you had a lot of tech companies coming out of, say, COVID and a few years before COVID. And the amount of money available to spend in the markets was insane. And if you look at, you know, the framework we said, product operations marketing, like a lot of companies, a lot of people were putting a lot of money on the third bucket on marketing.
Yep.
And you were offering all your products with huge discounts and promotions to the customers and whatever. And every company, you know, top line, every company revenue was growing because they're growing super fast because of the amount of money that was pumped in the market. And it was very hard to differentiate between a very good business and a bad business because everybody was growing, right? But then the moment you pull the plug on marketing, you see, you know, there are some companies that collapsed 90%, and some company that you know, kept where they were and maybe kept growing, right? So I think if you are an entrepreneur, you're starting your company, you may be hopefully getting money from some investor and VC. Don't get fooled by the rush of growing your revenues, and because everybody can buy revenues, right? Everybody can spend money and grow their top line. That's very easy. That's very easy too. You have enough money, anyone can do that. Focus on the first 2 points, product and operations, right? Because that's where the growth is going to be in the long run. If you're very confident in 1 and 2, then start the engine on marketing, right? But don't do it before. And that's a mistake a lot of people that get funded and they get money do at the very beginning.
And we have seen quite a few of them also, like personally, I guess you have too, because we see that initial, like, I want to say like growth spurt, but then it kind of like topples over because they haven't paid attention to those first 2 things. And again, this is something I hope the people who are watching this webinar will keep in mind. So I just noticed the time, and so we've kind of reached like halfway through the session. I just want to make a note to the attendees at this point. So I'm going to try and like wrap up the conversation I'm having with Tomaso in say next 15 minutes. But if you have any questions, I would ask you to please enter the questions using the Q&A button on your Zoom screens. The chat is a bit hard to monitor, so I would ask if you can stick to the Q&A window and just submit your questions there, and I will try and answer it towards the end of this particular session. All right, Tomaso, back to you now. And again, what's the road ahead like for Talabat? Like, how do you see Talabat growing and developing? What's new for users like me to look forward to?
So there's I think first of all, you can expect to keep finding all the best selection, the best restaurants, and the best operations on Talabat, the best the right food at the right time. We're investing a lot into personalization and making sure we understand better what you want and when you want it. Groceries is a big bet for us, and we want to double, triple down. Our grocery experience has been improving drastically in the last 2 years. I personally stopped going groceries. I order 100% on Talabat. Now you can find absolutely everything on Talabat. Yeah. Other big initiatives, we launched in UAE what we call buy now, pay later. So opportunity for customers to order and then pay after 1 month. We launched a credit card with in partnership with ADCB. And that is a fantastic product. It gives customers 35% cashback on all the Talabat orders every month, and it's a free credit card, so you don't have to pay any fee. And I think in the quick commerce domain, we may launch a new vertical. So now we have food and grocery. We're thinking about a new one to launch. And then we're gonna make our ecosystem even stronger. So today we have a subscription product, rewards product, where you get points when you order on Talabat, and then you can burn those points to get discounts and other things. And we have big plans for these two programs as well for this year. So it's going to be a very packed year in terms of like new things and evolution of the current business. So I'm very excited about it.
Tomaso, again, I have to kind of like go back to the topic of this discussion, which is about like that human touch in creating apps. And what you mentioned so far, honestly, like even when you're talking about future plans, I can hear like you're still thinking about the user every time you're talking about like people who are using that app and how that will be that human-centric approach. But I kind of want to like ask about the other element of this human-centricness, if that's the right word, and talking about like within your organization, having this people focus, like with your team, with your employees, with everyone who's part of the company, starting from, I want to say, your management all the way to the drivers on the road. How important is that, and how do you maintain this culture within your organization?
Look, it's at the core of our business, and so we have around 4,000 employees at Talabat. But on top of the office employees, we have 100,000 riders out there that every single day represent the Talabat brand on the road, right? And there's a strong association between the riders and the brand. And I think you cannot tell riders what to do, how to behave, but is embedded in the culture of the company, right? If they believe they work for a good company and for a then they will. I always have this example of vendor that today is on Talabat that didn't want to be on Talabat as a grocery vendor, right? And why did he decide to join Talabat? Because one day his wife went overseas, So he didn't have anyone that was cooking at home, so he started using Talabat to order food. So one day he went for a jog around his house, and the Talabat rider arrived while he was still out. And so he's like, "Don't worry, just leave the food at the doorstep. I'm coming back in 10 minutes." Mm-hmm. And the rider said, "No, because there are a lot of stray cats here around the house. I'm worried that they will eat your food.
Oh, wow.
So don't. So I will wait for you." So the rider waited for him to come, and then when he arrived, he left. Right. And so because of this, that person then, who's the owner of this big store, decided to join Talabat as a vendor. Right.
Amazing.
So did we teach the rider, in case of there are stray cats around the house, wait for the customer? Of course, it's such an edge case that is impossible to capture in a training, right? Yeah. But because of them, I think, feeling strong about the Talabat brand and associated to the Talabat brand and liking the culture of the company, etc., they go the extra mile in these kind of situations, right? It is something that you can just build through having a good culture in your company, not through training, I believe.
Yeah, this example reminded me, I think maybe it was a year or so ago, when we had that viral video of the Talabat driver. I mean, it was just such a small, simple thing, but it was such beautiful. And of course, the leadership also take note of it. And it was lovely to see that kind of good.
Everybody asked me if these videos are staged. The answer is no. The answer is like they just happen, right?
So, yeah, it's just because of the culture of the company, right? And that shows like how that level of innovation or level of I want to say human centricity is there in everything that you do. I think we're about to run out of time, Tomaso, but maybe as kind of like as the last question before I move on to the Q&A that we're getting from the audience, I will just go through and try and figure out questions that we can answer in this limited time we have. And again, this is extremely general and extremely broad, and it really depends on the kind of business you're operating, the kind of app that you're developing. But, I want to say like 3 top tips, or 3 or 4, just an arbitrary number, but like any specific bits of advice that you can give like entrepreneurs and app developers when building their apps, what would those be? Again, maybe like it's very top level, obviously, but yeah, just 3 or 4 points, if you can mention.
Yeah. So I think maybe, I don't know if I have 4, but maybe I have a couple. Like the first one, for sure, if you're building a product, if you're building an app, if you're building anything that you want to go to the market, is get a lot of feedback. Get a lot of feedback early on. The later you get feedback, the more expensive it is to implement that feedback, right? I meet founders sometimes that are very protective about their idea, and they don't want to share because they think they have found the holy grail, and if they share the idea with someone else, someone else will copy it and will go to market before them. Let me tell you something. If you're very excited about something, you're probably the best person to launch that and to put it in the market. It's very unlikely that you tell someone about an idea you have and they will drop everything they're doing and launch it, right? So get feedback, ask people, ask your potential customers. There's a lot of very good framework like a Lean Startup Machine, etc., that teach you how to validate your theory, your hypothesis, your products. So getting feedback, I think, is one of the most important things. It's very easy for us to get attached to our own ideas, to completely disregard what other people think, but the other people are the customers. So it's important that you know what they want, right? So I think that's super important. Other than that, look, focus on really the customer pain points and the problems. If you fall in love with a product, but no one is willing to pay for it, no one is willing no one can understand what is the actual problem. If you cannot articulate in one sentence what is the problem that is being solved with that product, then probably is not a product that has a market fit, right? So Doesn't mean that you should not do it, but maybe you need to pivot, and maybe you need to think about how to fit it with the market, right? Yeah, I would say this is really top of mind for kind of entrepreneurs. I'm sure there's more, but maybe the other one is something that maybe is more for big companies, but also when you're small, maybe it's even more applicable, is, well, I like to say, don't sleepwalk into complexity, right? Sometimes we see a land of opportunities and we say, oh, we can do this, but we can also do this, and we can do that, and we can do, and then before launching a product, we're already building 5 products, right? So, and we all think, okay, we're a strong team. This is not a distraction. This is very easy to build. It's very fast and doesn't need maintenance, and like you just roll it out or whatever. Don't fool yourself, because everything you do has an opportunity cost. Yeah. So my suggestion, focus on the 80-20 rule, focus on one thing, forget about all the distractions until that one thing is out there, rolled out and working, and you have good traction, etc. Don't think about anything else, right? That helps a lot.
Thank you so much, Tomaso. I mean, I think I don't really need to repeat this, because all of this is so useful and so common within our industry, within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Like the first point you mentioned, the number of times I've just told people, just tell other people besides your, I don't know, your wife and your parents, tell other people, because yeah, they keep it so close to their chest because they are so afraid. But yeah, it's only hurting you in the long run. And I completely agree with that. And the last 2 points you mentioned in terms of finding those paying customers to increase that stickiness, and sleepwalking into complexity. I'm going to use that line for the rest of my life. It's such a good line, and yeah, I'm definitely not going to forget that. At this point, I'm just going to go straight into the questions, Tomaso. We've got quite a few, so I'm going to try and figure out the ones that make sense and make it work for us. And the first thing, I think I'm going to start with this question from a attendee called Mohammed Mansoor. And this kind of relates to what you said. And that's why I thought we'll start with this particular question. Basically, he's asking, do you support the idea of a partial launch for a new application with a trial version to measure user experience and improve the app before an official and a larger scale launch? Or the second question, or the second part of the question is, should we prepare for all possibilities and launch uniformly? This kind of relates to what you said, but yeah, it would be nice to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Mohammed, I'm a big fan of starting small and with a test and with a trial, and then go big scale. And we do it a lot of times at Talabat as well. For example, when we launched Buy Now, Pay Later, we offer customer at the checkout the option to click here and pay later, right? But then the feature was not built. And then if you were to click there and check out, we say, oh, we're actually building this feature, but thank you for registering your interest. Whenever it's ready, we're going to let you know. Why did we do that? Because we wanted to measure how many customers will be interested in the feature. And then we set ourselves a target. If more than, say, 10% of the customers click on it, then we're going to build it. If it's only 1% of the customers are going to click on it, then we'll move to the next thing and we don't build it. And we save ourselves a lot of work, right? So this goes back to the point of validation. And actually, and we call this a smoke mirror. So a smoke mirror test, right? So we put a feature that doesn't exist, and we just ask customers to use it, and we just register how many one would have wanted to use that, right? Yeah. If you look at all the startup frameworks and the product validation, idea validation frameworks, they all emphasize the importance of doing this such kind of things. So I will go 100% the first route.
The partial launch and then add on, as you said. And I really like this idea, what you said about the pay later. You're registering interest. And that's again, it's a very small and simple thing, but it's a great idea. So you know that it is going to work before you launch it.
And before you launch it, you have to set yourself a target. You say, okay, for 100 people that are going to land on this page, I consider test successful if 20.
Yeah.
But don't set the target after.
You have to set it before. Yeah.
You say before because then if you're really attached to your idea, you see the data, you say, oh, but that's maybe good enough. No, set a target before you launch. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Here's another question, also in the same frame of reference, I want to say, from Manel Juini. Please forgive me if I got your name wrong. But Manel is asking, when can we consider that our app has found a fit in the market in terms of users? Because at the beginning of business journey, people most often use their own funds, and that does not allow them the budget to communicate or attract millions of users and convert them to users. So, how would you define finding a fit in the market? What's the criteria for that?
Again, I think you need to find ways to test the product market fit before launching the product, right? The ideas could be, for example, I don't know, you create a web page with the offering of your product that doesn't really have the product, but it just explains what the product is like, and you ask people to register the interest for that, right? I don't know, you want to sell online jewelry, diamonds, or whatever it is, right? I guess to do that, you have to build a big inventory, you have to buy the jewels, whatever. Or you can just put up a page where you say, okay, I'm selling diamonds and whatever, click here to register interest, right? And then you just spend some, $200, $300, $400 in performance marketing with Google or with Instagram or Facebook, and try to push traffic to this page. And then you see of the number of people that go to that page, how many register their interest, right? So you can do tests like this, and that helps you validate if the product makes sense for the market before even starting building it, right? If you test your product fit after you build the product, that's too late.
Too late, yeah. Okay, so this one is a question from Amin Belabed. Again, apologies if I got your name wrong. So he or she has asked basically about the user experience, and the question is specific to the cars industry. I'm assuming they want to build an app specific to automobiles, but I would kind of generalize this, Tomaso, and how important is user experience? How would you, I don't know, on a grading scale, how important would you grade that as?
So I think user experience is super important with the diminishing returns. And what I mean is the following. So there's a stage of which any improvement in the user experience directly translates into business improvement, right? Until a point where, the more you invest in user experience, the less returns you have on it, right? And for us, when I think about food, we are at the point where I think our user experience is very optimized, and we looked into a lot of things. But for example, groceries, I give you a very, very recent example. We rolled out what we call L3 category. So when you go groceries and you select, I don't know, fruits and vegetables, before you will see the list of fruits and vegetables. Now you have fruits and vegetables. You can also look at bananas and stone fruits, grapefruits, etc. So kind of a subcategory of that. That reduced the time to add items to basket from 37 seconds to 7 seconds.
Wow.
And increased the basket size by 10%. So way more people added items because of this UX/UI change, right? So this is a huge impact in the whole business, right? And you can apply this to any industry. For the cars, I think similar, right? So you could think about the same categorization. You can have, your car brands. You can have your car brands and your models. So you can have engine type, or you can have, having a good filter system, having a good, category system. That can impact a lot. But then after you have a category 3, maybe building category 4 will not improve the time to basket or the basket size that much, right? So you have to always strike the balance. What is the optimal point, right? Where investments produce diminishing returns.
Thanks, Tomaso. This will probably be the last question, but and this is again coming from Mohammed Mansour, who we answered it, but this is a good question, and so I'm going back to that as opposed to the others. So he's asking something very specific to Talabat, but I also think it has a larger frame of reference when we're talking about the App Olympics competition. So the question here is like, is the restriction on orders exclusively through the Talabat app and not the website related to a particular strategy? And the reason I'm asking you this is kind of like take it a little bit more broader. And, this is a question people ask, should we build an app or should we just build a mobile-friendly website? And I think that would be the context I would like to ask you to answer this question. Like, what is that difference? How do you personally look at it at Talabat? And maybe, we'll go from there.
Sure. So we have both web and native today. So we have both app and web. There are two different platforms though. So it's not kind of HTML5 into the app, etc. So it's just really a web interface and an app interface that we have today. Of course, our traffic on web compared to our traffic on app is much, much lower. I think we're talking of, 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 difference. App allows you to do way more things that you can do on web, especially on the, customer profiling, understanding, how do they use the app, where do they like the session management, addresses, and that, using the devices of the phone like GPS, etc., to enhance the experience. One game changer for us, for the technical people in the room, was moving our development of the app entirely to Flutter, which is a technology that allows you to, build things once instead of needing one Android engineer and one iOS engineer. Flutter helps you build an app which works both on iOS and Android, right? So if the question is to save kind of development time, maybe looking into a solution like Flutter could be something to consider.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time. I have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to ask you one more question from our audience. And this will be the last one, I promise, Tomaso. This one comes from Samane Islamifar. I like this question because it's again going to the basics, going back to the basics in terms of starting a business or starting an app. So the question is, if the customer is already experienced and is convenient with the manual and traditional form of doing his decision making processes, but the product that we are building is still giving them useful patterns or useful strategies to help them with what they're doing. However, the user is still happy with his experience in his mind, with his old experience in his mind. So what is the next step for the product developer? How does the product developer tackle such a user?
So I didn't understand. So you have
okay, I'm going to try and make it simpler. There is a way of doing something which has been the way it has been done for, 10 years, right? So this person has created an app which allows you to do it in a better way, but the user per se is still kind of stuck to that old way of doing things. How does the product developer, kind of bring him into the fold?
Yeah, very, very good question. So I think it boils down to what we were saying before of how much of a problem you're solving for the cat. So humans are creatures of habit. We don't like to change. We don't like to do things differently than what we were doing before. So to change, it's a mental cost. to us, right? If I have to switch from one app to another, and one way of doing things to another way of doing things, it has a cost. Okay. What is the benefit that I'm getting out of it, right? So if I'm getting a benefit that I recognize being much bigger than the cost, then I will do it. If the benefit is very low, small, and marginal, I probably
would not
do it, right? So to answer your question, I would need to understand what is so am I, let's say it's food delivery, am I allowing a customer to order food in 5 seconds less? Instead of taking 1 minute, they take 55 seconds. Or am I reading in people's mind, and the moment they press the button, I send them exactly the right thing they want in that moment, right? Because in the first case, I would argue probably is not big as a value proposition to switch to a new app. The second one maybe is more interesting, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on that, I think.
So, Tomaso, I must say, thank you so much for all of the insights that you've shared. It's genuinely been eye-opening for me personally, and I can tell from the questions that we're getting. There are plenty of more questions. Some of them I'm going to answer now as we wrap things up. But I also would like to highlight a few things to our audience here. Now, we do make entrepreneurship as this very glamorous thing, but do make clear, like, this is a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, and the user is very demanding. I don't know how many of you actually caught that, but Tomaso was earlier talking about like the time frame of making a particular decision from 37 seconds. We're talking seconds to 7 seconds. That's again, like, mind-blowing in my head. Like, we are going that deep into the user's interests and users' insights to make something that will work for them. And I hope people who are watching this webinar keep that in mind as they build their businesses. For everyone who's watching, just a couple of questions which are being repeated. Yes, the applications are still open for the App Olympics competition. I would say go to createapps.ae, look for App Olympics on the right-hand side. You can submit your application. There are people who are asking if you can resubmit an application. Yes, you can. Just make sure you use the same email addresses that you logged in with, so that the person who's going filtering the applications will know exactly who it came from and why it is different. The last thing, again, a lot of questions, Tomaso, and this is credit to you. People are asking, will this webinar be available? Yes, it is going to be available as a recording on the Create Apps, on the learning aspect of the channel. So yes, it is going to be a video there for any time you need to refer to it. Tomaso, any final words, any final notes for our audience?
No, guys, I think it's a super exciting stage of life to be in, like having your own company, having your own product, having your own app is something, no matter how it goes, you're going to treasure for the rest of your life. So yes, it is a lot of work. It is hard. It is sometimes you will feel like you want to give up, but really my suggestion will be enjoy the time and get the most out of it. Even if it doesn't work, you're going to learn a lot of things. If it works, it's going to be fantastic, but really enjoy the journey. Don't think about the end. Enjoy the journey you're in right now. And Abid, thank you so much. It was a very interesting conversation. Really enjoyed it. And thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Tomaso. An absolute pleasure to have us. And thank you again to Talabat for basically giving us this great conversation for the App Olympics competition. I'm going to stop the webinar here and order something on Talabat. So I'll see you guys soon. And yeah, all the best to all the applicants. Once again, the website to be used is createapps.ae. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great day ahead.
You. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Until next time, happy learning.